much for joining us on a Thursday night for the virtual Macomb meeting of the Warren Astronomical Society. I am Diane, your newly re-elected president for this year and next year. Bob, our in the news presenter for the night, are you ready to take it from the top on the news?
On mute, yes, I am ready to share.
All right, I will hand things over to Bob to take us on a trip through in the news and in the sky for tonight.
All right, what I want to share here, let's get it up and present. There we go, and Cisco, out loud. And there it is, share that. All right, everybody seeing that? Okay, is that shared?
It is, although we see your browser window frame if you want to make it full screen.
That would be F11. There we go. All right. All right. So, hi, everyone. I'm Bob Tremblay. I'm the outreach officer, the newly re-elected outreach officer for the Warren Astronomical Society. Well, the SpaceX Crew Dragon, Crew 1, launched on, get this out of here, November 15th. One of these days, I'm going to see one of these things, and it was all over Twitter, and what really amazed me is this screenshot right here of the control consoles in the Crew Dragon. I was looking at that going, holy mackerel, that's really cool. Now, take note of this little green blob down here. I'll get to that later. So the Crew Dragon, the next day, docked with the International Space Station, and the astronauts came aboard, and so did that little green blob, which turned out to be a baby Yoda from The Mandalorian. So science fiction meets science, and I couldn't approve anymore. That is just awesome. He was on the Crew Dragon there, and yeah, hopefully he won't eat any power conduits on the International Space Station. But I'm just thrilled that there's a baby Yoda on the ISS. So the Mars 2020 Perseverance rover is landing in 90 days, and this little tweet I copied over here is from a teacher who is doing a Perseverance countdown with her students and is doing a whole bunch of Mars stuff. And what really impressed me was she had this book here. And this is one of the books that Emily Ladkawala, formerly of the Planetary Society, recommended as one of this year's books for kids. And so I would like to encourage some local teachers to do the same thing, have a landing countdown, and maybe have our own landing event. So talk about that later. China is launching its own lunar sample return mission, which is pretty darn cool. This giant thing rolled out, and there is the mission profile. It's going to have an orbiter and a lander with a ascent stage that docks back up with the orbiter and then returns the sample to Earth. So this is slated to launch, the tweet says, early next week. So keep an eye out for that. The 2020 Nobel Prize in Physics has been awarded for discoveries about black holes, which is pretty cool. I could spend a long time on this, but I'm going to make it really, really short. So half of it went to Penrose for the discovery of the black hole formation is a prediction of the general theory of relativity, which is really cool. The other half is awarded to these two for the discovery of essentially the Sagittarius A star, the supermassive black hole in the center of our galaxy, which amazes me it took this long for them to be recognized for that, but whatever. This is a pretty interesting article that's on my blog. This is written by Chris Graney, one of the bloggers on the Vatican Observatory Foundation. They found this projector, and the article is really good. He was in email communications with people that were looking for this thing, and it details the whole history of where this thing went, the upgrades, and essentially it was lost for 20 years, and they found it in a barn. It has been retrieved and restored, so that's really cool. The OSIRIS-REx asteroid sample return mission, you may have noted it took that sample, but actually let me go out to this tweet. So you guys seeing that? Is that still up? This is the animation from 3 different cameras, and as OSIRIS-REx comes down, you're going to see over on this one here the shadow of the sample head come down, and then you're going to see an explosion of rock. I can't tell you how excited I am about this mission. I just can't wait for the samples to come back. So watch over on the right.
Point of
here.
order, Bob. You
Yes?
have, in fact, told us a number of times how excited you are.
Hey, have I mentioned I'm all excited? But yes, it's rock explosion. This looks a whole lot like the rock explosion from the Japanese Hayabusa 2 when it took its sample. So that is really awesome. So let's go back to presentation. Get out of there. Okay, so F11. I found out this today. Another cable on Arecibo has snapped on November 6th. A cable snapped, and said only personnel needed to respond to the incident are on site. Management is working to access the break, and then as I was continuing to do research, the NSF has decided to defund Arecibo. I'm heartbroken.
Actually, demolish it within 2 weeks.
That's newer news than I had heard about it.
If I can interrupt,
yeah, I'm heartbroken
By the end of the year, it will be gone.
I was talking with Paul Goldsmith, who used to be the director there. Remember, he spoke at our meeting a number of years back, and I had discussed this with him, and he said that he wasn't blaming the current people operating it. He said that it's been underfunded for a number of years, and there has not been proper maintenance or inspections of things like that, as far as he knew.
No, there hasn't been. And it's been public knowledge that this would happen if we didn't change something. And we didn't change something. And now a multi-million-dollar, incredibly historic facility is completely unsafe. It needs to be torn down before it kills somebody.
And climate change precipitated its down because of the sorry about that.
God. So I'm heartbroken, and what are you gonna do? And this last thing, losing Arecibo will create a hole that cannot be filled, at least not anytime soon. So 2 weeks, holy mackerel. So on that depressing note, I'm going to go into something more fun in the sky. So let me get out of here.
Did I just say something first, Bob?
Yes, go ahead.
Hello. In honor of the soon-to-be decommissioned telescope, I would like to imagine that the telescope would have written this piece of writing by Oscar Wilde from De Profundis near the end of his life. Society, if we have constituted it, will have no place for me, has none to offer. But nature, whose sweet rains fall on unjust and just alike, will have clefts in the rocks where I may hide, and secret valleys in whose silence I may weep undisturbed. She will hang the night with stars, so that I may walk abroad in the darkness without stumbling, and send the wind over my footprints, so that none may track me to my hurt. And we find a line from the telescope here. Nature will cleanse me in great waters, and with bitter herbs make me whole. This was a wonderful, wonderful telescope, and it's really sad to find out that it's ending its life.
Yeah,
Thank you, David. That's a beautiful, very appropriate reading.
I am going to have to write a nice post about that, which means I got to do a whole lot of research, because I was intending on writing a post on Arecibo to tell about the history. Now I'm kind of obligated, but not the way I wanted to do it, but okay. So anyway, what I've got up here, I'm going to do the In the Sky using Stellarium tonight. Now, if you don't know what Stellarium is, it's a free app for the PC, Mac, and Linux, and you can download it from stellarium.org. And what it does, it's a planetary map, and it shows you the night sky. It starts up showing you the night sky as it is right now. So this is our southwestern sky, and you can see there's the moon and Saturn and Jupiter, which couldn't be better. So over the next couple days, the moon's going to be near them, and then it's going to start going over, and eventually it's going to be next to Mars on the 25th. Mars is currently in the evening sky. Let's get that up here. It is high in the southeastern sky at about now. It's shortly after sunset. It's in the eastern sky. But what's really cool is that we've got, where is it? The moon is. Let me get the moon out of there. There we go. If you've got the Pleiades over here and you've got Mars over there, you can pretty much point to exactly where Uranus is. It's right between the two. So if you draw a line between the sky, that is where Uranus is. And as a matter of fact, I'll show you a little bit on that later. So in the morning, let's change the time and go to 6 a.m. No, stop it. It's running right now. There we go. All right, so at 6 a.m., that's 6:30 then. 6:30 in the morning, I showed my wife off. Mercury is low in the sky, and right now it's right there. So over the course of the next couple days, it'll be lower and lower. So if you want to hit Mercury, you only got a couple days to see it. Let's go over to my other post. All right, out of here, back over here. All right, so this is my post that I write for the Vatican Observatories Foundation, and pretty much showing the same thing. I do have this every week. What's in the sky? There's the morning sky, Mars, Uranus, and all that stuff. Now, this is some of the stuff that people have been posting on Twitter about Uranus. That's just gorgeous. Has anybody seen Uranus like that through their scope, seen all the moons like that? That's got to be a giant, giant telescope. But you can see that. So there's the moon going by Saturn and Jupiter in the mornings. My wife, in her astronomy class, told her students to look for Cassiopeia, so I put that in here. And after sunset, it's in the northeastern sky, and then it whips around over the night, and in the morning sky, it is between northwest. Our moon is currently a waxing crescent. It will be at first quarter on November 22nd. And it'll be full on November 30th. These images are taken from the NASA Moon Phase and Libration site. You can go there and see what the moon's going to be like every day. And if you click on that image, it'll download an annotated TIFF file that has all of the stuff along the terminator labeled. So it is great for doing observing if you're doing your moon observing. Continue on down here. All right. Oh, it's the sun for today. This is the Solar Dynamics Observatory site. I oftentimes bring that up. So this amazed me. Here is a lot of prominence activity on the sun over the last 48 hours. And that's just, look at this. It's just crazy up there. And there's something right here, a filament that does a pop in a second. There it is. But yeah, look at that. Just prominence is everywhere. There is a small sunspot down here. Little sunspot down there. And let's go back to the corona. Oh, we wanted to animate it. Get out of here. So I love these animations. It really shows how beautiful the sun is. That's just, I could stare at that all day. So we've got there'd be some coronal activity from the sunspot right there, and there's no sunspot there, but more coronal loop activity with that. That's just gorgeous. Love the SDO. Okay, so continuing on with my post, go down here. This is something that somebody posted on the Solar Activity page on Facebook. This is a site where people post amateur photographs of the sun, and there's some amazing photographs on there every single day. This is something I found out was interesting. NASA is telling us that we are up over 1 million asteroids, but the Minor Planet Center says we're at 993, and that number has not changed for 2 weeks. The NASA number actually reduced by 591 in the last week, so I'm not sure what the conflict between those two is, but we're really close to 1 million asteroids right now. So the Leonids was yesterday. and you might still be able to catch some today. Here's our solar system. Parker Solar Probe is at aphelion, and Mars 2020 is heading into Mars. Now this is pretty cool. This is when you take a look and you saw Jupiter in the sky, Jupiter and Saturn in the sky. This is what's going on. There's Earth in its orbit, and there's Jupiter and Saturn, and that is why they look so close in the sky.
Yeah.
So with that, one of the things that OSIRIS-REx found is that there are tiny little craters, impact craters, all over that, and the guy found it from he noticed these patterns from bullet holes overseas on buildings. So they found some micro craters on that. There's Baby Yoda floating in the International Space Station. But anyway, so that is in the sky for this week and a little bit of next week, and that's it. Look up.
All right. Thank you very much, Bob. We've got Adrian Bradley on deck for the In the News in the Sky for the next meeting. But we are taking, if anybody's interested in doing their own personal spin on In the News in the Sky, we are taking volunteers for next year. So contact me if you are interested. All right. As far as officer reports go, thank you very much to Ken Burton for running the election last month, or 2 weeks ago. I am proud and honored of being reelected as your president for next year, and I'm sure all the other reelected officers can say the same. I would like to thank Glenn Wilkins, Mark Jacobison, and Jonathan Cade for serving with us on the board this year. I will definitely miss Glenn's fantastic minutes, Mark's dry humor, and Jonathan prominent voice at board meetings, though I can always just go into his office and talk to Jonathan anytime I feel like it. So won't be far away. But I would also like to thank deeply incoming board members, Secretary-elect Mark Kedzier, Treasurer-elect Adrian Bradley, and Publications Director-elect Dale Teamy. 2 of you returning board members that I loved working with in the past, and 1 of you brand new, and I'm deeply excited to be working with you. So I think we've got a great board assembled for next year, and I am really looking forward to it. We are still taking, this is your last chance to put in any submissions for the Distinguished Service Award nominations. The board will be finalizing it shortly so that we can unveil our awardees at the upcoming virtual banquet. So if you have a club member that excels in outreach, in hands-on work, in being part of the club infrastructure, or in making a club, this club, the top priority in their life, do reach out to the board and let us know. We can cross-reference it with previous awardees to make sure that we're not giving somebody the Searles Award twice. Since people who get the Searles Award tend to keep on doing the things that make the club the pillar of their life. But yeah, so if you have an awardee, please let us know. I know it's a bit difficult this year since we had no outreach events in person. The opportunities for hands-on were limited, but some people's contributions in this year of a transition to digital do stand out, and we want to make sure that everybody is recognized. As far as the banquet goes, so the banquet will not be the first Thursday of December. It will be the Thursday after the Cranbrook virtual meeting, as customary, which this year, thanks to a quirk of the calendar, means it's the second Thursday. We have a fabulous speaker lined up, thanks to Bob Tremblay. We will be doing our usual end-of-year wrap-up. We will be doing the awards. We will be having a keynote speaker. I regret that we will not be able to offer you all the open bar or the piano entertainment or the dinner, but them's the breaks in 2020. We'll make it up to y'all next year. Other end-of-the-year thing that I want to make sure is on your radar is, of course, the calendar. Our calendar committee has been asking for submissions in between the return of solar activity stunning planetary conjunctions, and the best comet that any of us have seen in the Northern Hemisphere since 2008. Y'all took some good pictures. Oh yes, and the Mars opposition. So please get the pictures into the calendar committee because we have the potential for the best calendar ever this year. And we want to make sure that we make that a reality because I don't know about you, but whether I'm at home or at my office, I love my WASP calendar. All right, I will now pass things over to our past and future First Vice President, Dr. Dale Parton.
Thank you, Diane. At our next meeting, which will be on Monday, December the 7th, we were going to have a speaker talking about how to buy your first telescope. He had some things come up and will not be able to give that presentation. So I'm currently working on what we're going to do for a main speaker. And so I'll just say, if someone here has something they'd like to present, let me know soon. The short presentation on that evening will be by Mark O'Malley. He recently gave a presentation on Wernher von Braun and sort of didn't finish it. So he's coming back to finish his presentation, which was really interesting, on Wernher von Braun. Then, as Diane mentioned, just a few days after that, on Thursday, December the 10th, we will have our last meeting of the year, our virtual banquet. Our special speaker will be Dr. Guy Consalmagno, who's the director of the Vatican Observatory. Again, thanks to Bob Tremblay. Thank you, Bob. So I'm sure that will be extremely interesting. Back to you, Diane. Oh,
all right.
Yes, I would like to say, beyond needing a speaker on December the 7th, I'm currently scheduling speakers. Our next opening for a speaker would be in April or May. So if you've got something in mind, but it's going to take a while, and that would suit your time frame, let me know. Thank you.
Yes, so I believe that our observatory chair, Riyad Mahdi, he messaged me about 10 minutes ago, let me know. He's watching us on YouTube, but has not been able to join the Webex or speak. So I will simply refer you to his previous report in the WASP for the update on the status of Stargate and the double star group that he is the subgroup chairperson of. And I will turn things over now to Glenn for the secretary update.
I knew there was a Stargate. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
I'm sorry about that delay. Diane, the Cranbrook minutes have been reviewed and are submitted for publication, and they will include the entire election results and what happened there. Everything else is fine. That's all I have to report this time.
All right. Thank you very much, Glenn. Mark at Treasury, I see you there on the
Yes. Good evening, Madam President. And I will still try to interject some dry humor, even though I won't be treasurer. For the month ending October 31st, we have 93 current members. We've taken in $2,006 so far this year. We've spent $1,769. We have $21,274 in the bank, $0 checks in hand, and $585 in cash for a total of $21,859. The rest of the details are in the WASP. GLAC, we did get a donation for Astronomy at the Beach in the amount of $50 that was deposited into the account with an ending balance of $3,075.
All right. Thank you very much, Mark. And Bob at Outreach.
You're funny, outreach. I got nothing. I haven't done anything. I'm going crazy wanting. I see all my neighbors, my new neighbors here, and I'm like, I want to set my telescope up.
No,
So
unfortunately.
there's no way I'm doing it. I just got a new pair of binoculars and a nice new binocular tripod. Nope, not doing it.
Remember how you were trying to juggle 7 flaming chainsaws last year on outreach, though, Bob?
Yeah, I don't have any hands left either.
So Bob.
Yeah.
But the one good thing we have, though, is I did contact the Metro Parks and told them that, hey, we have a memorandum of understanding with you, and we're supposed to be doing stuff at the observatory, and they said, don't worry about it. So
yes,
I even offered to do stuff online. I said, would be willing to do stuff out for you online, and they just didn't seem to bite. Maybe they're not doing anything online. Who knows?
I think it's a bit difficult for them to generate revenue online. The 2 events that we would normally do for them were, of course, revenue generators. So I understand their hesitation there, but yes, thank you for following up with them because, hey, we exist to serve the public, even if it's been a bit difficult this year.
So Bob?
Yes.
Yeah, this is Doug. I think I sent you a note that we were going to do an outreach up in Boone last month, which we did. We had
you did? Awesome.
Yeah, we had 15 people from the a group called Trailmen, and plus I had another 9 or 10 people. We had 26 people up there total, and so that was a good event. We were up there for the weekend for them, and they got to work on their badges for astronomy, etc. So that was a lot of fun. They also poured a 6-foot slab for me as part of their service project. So I got this nice 6-foot pad for putting the scopes on.
Very good.
Awesome. Thank you. Anybody else do anything?
If you've got anything to report, make sure you email it to Bob so it can be incorporated into his report for the
I'll
WASP.
definitely put that thing in there. Thanks, Bill.
Yeah, I've got something I've been doing.
Question for Doug.
Go ahead.
Doug.
Yeah.
Jim, this is the officer report section. Let's save the questions for after.
This has to do with outreach.
Yeah,
I put something in every week now into Facebook on something about astronomy every Monday, and I'm doing it now on a continuing basis. And right now I'm covering the moons of the solar system, and that's what I'm doing as an outreach right now, as best we can do.
Cool. Make sure you get that in as an email to Bob so Bob can get into his report. And we can take questions not related to officer reports after the officer and subgroup reports, but right now we need to go to Jonathan for publications.
That he talked about.
The WASP is out.
Okay. Thank you, Jonathan. And I'm sure Jonathan won't mind at all turning things over to Dale for the WASP, since though we
it's not much of a handover.
Yeah. Though we do have to get the 2020 mailer out and running. Okay, so as far as Jonathan, were you saying something? Sorry, there's a bit of a delay.
I said okay.
Okay. All right. Solar Marty is not with us tonight, but Bob ably covered the solar activity, which has been refreshing to see after a very boring year. Double Star Riyadh is not with us, but Dale and Jonathan and I attended a fascinating opportunity for a double star research project. It's an 8-week class for $350. We sent out the information on MailChimp earlier tonight, but it offers the opportunity for students and people affiliated with education. And did we get a ruling, Jonathan, on whether or not club members could participate, or did we have to be tied into some formal academic institution?
I did not pick that up. I think Dale might have.
I did not hear the answer to that particular question when it was asked tonight.
I read before the meeting tonight that many amateur astronomers do take that course.
Okay, that's what I thought. All right, so if you want to do an actual research course into double stars that culminates in a group project with an academic paper that will be published. We sent out the basic information on the MailChimp outreach tonight. Jonathan, Dale Parton, and I all have additional information if you are interested. It is an 8-week course, 1 Zoom meeting a month. So it's a great way to fill the double star observing gap in your life left by not being able to go out to Stargate with Riyadh. Check it out. History subgroup says nothing to report other than what's in the WASP. Do we have anything from Astronomical League, Jonathan?
Nope.
All right. Then let's, before we get into the observing reports, Jimmy had a question for Doug.
Yeah, I think many of us would be interested in Doug's experience with a star party with live people and how he handled it and what the overall situation was like. I know I've been talking with the folks out in Arizona about the same.
So the
You have any thoughts to share with us?
yeah, the group pretty much the group stayed collectively gathered in their own area. So there was 5 leaders and 11 trailmen, and they basically everything was outdoors. So when we had them use the scope, we kept social distancing when everybody wanted to go and look through the scope. So there was really no issue there. There wasn't a lot of interaction between myself and that team in any close proximity. So when we wanted to chat, we were probably 10 feet apart from each other when we wanted to chat. If that's what you're really worried about. Is that what your question was associated with?
Yeah, Doug, let's see, we've all been talking about how we can do this sort of kind of close contact activity and do it safely. And so just wondered about your experience doing it. So thank you.
Mm-hmm. Oops.
All right. We do have an observing report that was sent to me in the mail. One moment. Here it is. GM Ross sends from the Veen Observatory. That is not the right one. Here. I seem to have misplaced it. I apologize. Anybody else have an observing report that they'd like to give while I look for the one that was mailed to me?
I have one.
Excellent. Thank you, Ken.
I took my grandsons, my daughter and son-in-law out with my 80 millimeter Vixen, just to give them a little tour of the planets, and I also used Alberio as one of the subjects. But what I've discovered about my Vixen is that when I was able to move down to a 3 millimeter lens, I got some really nice color on Mars that I really didn't expect. The greens a little bit, it shown up. I had used a 5 millimeter, it just didn't do as well as a 3 millimeter. I don't know what the difference would be on that ratio. Somebody knows that for sure. But anyway, it was really nice to look at. And I was able to see a couple of moons of Saturn, and of course the Galilean moons, obviously, of Jupiter. And it was the first time my son-in-law had actually seen through the telescope, and he wouldn't give it up when he saw Saturn. It was kind of funny. But anyway, that was an observing report. We had a very nice evening. We kept as distance as we could, obviously. But what was particularly good was the view of Mars. I thought that was pretty neat. Couldn't see.
You're using a smaller exit pupil, so you dim. Mars is actually a little too bright sometimes, right?
Right.
So with a smaller exit pupil, you tone it down a lot.
Yep.
And with that short focal length, you weren't operating at huge amount of power, but
Yep.
probably worked out really well.
It did, and I could not pick up on the polar cap. That was too distant.
It was very small.
Yeah,
The
very small.
dust storm has also picked up in recent days.
Has it? I didn't know
yes.
that. Okay.
I've been getting consistent updates from a colleague in the UK who's been updating me on the dust issue. So, speaking of Mars, I found the observing report from Gary Ross. It's a bit more concise than we're used to. So, 4th and 5th November, Wien Observatory, warm, windy day, 5-inch Newtonian, poor seeing wind, one of the worst views this apparition. 5 to 6th November, Wien, less wind in early evening, sky turbid, very disappointing on Mars, even with filter, polar cap not visible, band of dark features, best days behind us. 6th to 7th November, seeing better, Syrtis Major on western limb, Duca Leonis Regio obvious in orange-red filter, polar cap not visible. So Ken, it's not just you. 7th to 8th November, seeing good, polar cap visible for first time this year, clearly observed Hellas Planitia. Seeing was good on 9th of November, diameter of planet much reduced, very dark tip on Syrtis Major, seems to have a frost going on. And then on 8th to 9th November, using a 25A filter, good seeing, polar cap barely visible, Syrtis Major very dark, interface of Mare Cimmerium against Aeolus very well defined, hint of detail seen in Hellas Planitia, North Polar Hood never seen this opposition. So that's pretty interesting.
Hey, Diane, I've got a report if I can share content.
Yes, please.
And screen one. And my report is going to be in a little bit of contrast to what you just read. But I did a sketch. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So on November 6th, it was maybe the second day into a really good stretch of high pressure jet stream well north of us. I had outstanding seeing. I was using a bino viewer, probably around 300 power. The south polar cap was conspicuous. I mean, it was very obvious, very small, but very conspicuous. The north polar hood was obvious, and there was a lot of limb haze on the following limb. Preceding limb had a bit of haze concentrated in the south region here, but amazing. I mean, the best Mars I've seen in my life. The albedo was, I mean, there was more detail than I could possibly sketch, but being so good, whenever the seeing is really good, I grab a sketch pad and try to, put pencil to paper to try to capture it just because I want to remember it. But amazing seeing. And it was like that for a good 3-day stretch back to back here in Chesterfield. I'm sure most of Southeast Michigan. Go ahead.
So Mark, actually, well, I didn't want to cut in on your observing report, but
Yep.
Diane and I did some observing that same stretch of time, I think, and
Yes.
From Black River, and
Yes.
the seeing up there. So I think what was happening was the jet stream was actually probably going over the Grand Rapids area and then along the Michigan Ridge, up towards us, because we had the jet going over us every night. It was really kind of disappointing, but
and I will say that usually like in the summertime, I find that at sunset the seeing is fantastic, but Mars not reaching a high altitude till much later. The best seeing, and it's in contrast to my usual experience, the best seeing was around midnight, between 11 p.m. and 1 o'clock in the morning. It didn't really settle down, but once it settled in, it was like rock steady for an extended period of time. It's pretty amazing. But this, I'm just sharing nothing special, just an Andromeda DSLR photo I took on my deck here last week, and an Orion. And these were with my telephoto lens mounted to my advanced VX mount. Just they were 30-second exposures. I forget what ISO, but personal bests for me. Nothing special though in the world of astrophotography. And then,
Are you submitting your sketch to the calendar?
Well, if you wanted me to, I could. I didn't think it was really calendar worthy, but
that's for the calendar committee to decide. I want everybody in their stuff.
Okay,
it's a work of art. It's a work of art.
Yeah,
Mark,
this
it's
is
a work
going.
of art.
Well, thank you. This is going back to September. Not club organized outreach, but my son is a avid guitarist and a vocalist now, and we live near New Baltimore. There's a nice park downtown, and when it's nice out, I try to go and set up the scope in the evening sometimes. And we had a really nice evening this night. My son hustled for some cash, and we got a lot of people their first gasping views at Saturn and Jupiter that were well placed at that time.
For a couple of years, I set up my solar scope in that exact same spot.
It's a really nice spot, and lots of pedestrians with the park there. And then just a quick photo of when we were first doing our, not first doing, but our online meetings, when I was able to observe some early Jupiter while we were having our WASP online meeting, which I think has been fantastic, the online meetings. And that's all. Thank you.
Hey, Mark, give your son my kudos.
Oh, yeah. Thanks, Jim.
Jonathan, you want to add anything else about our final session this year with the 24-inch?
Sure. I mean, we pretty much locked in on a different interesting object every night. Several, and we tended to go deep on observing those objects. The first night, sadly, we hadn't gotten really a chance to collimate it after we put it back together. We just had rain the last couple trips we took up there, so it wasn't properly collimated. So the next day I collimated it, and then we had 2 really nice nights with it, and we got some pretty good views of Mars, particularly the third night. But we definitely, we were seeing the jet stream fly by, and spent a lot of really great time with the Skull Nebula, which is, I don't know what it looks like in a smaller scope, because I think I might have only ever seen it one time before through the Big Daub, but it's it's one of the few astronomical objects that I would really describe as creepy, and we were up there the weekend after Halloween, so it kind of was appropriate too.
We also spent some time with the Iris Nebula, and I'd like to thank all of you who took pictures of it this year, posted it on the Michigan Amateur Astronomers group on Facebook, because you catapulted that to the top of my must-see with the 24-inch list. And while I can't do quite what your cameras did, it was very enjoyable.
And also got, the autumn has a lot of really wonderful galaxies. NGC 253 is one that probably a lot of you have seen, but if you haven't seen that in a while, the Silver Coin Galaxy, go check that out, because it's the greatest galaxies that we can see, and for whatever reason people don't talk about it that much. I don't know why. It's the way I describe it is, it's like Andromeda but good, when it's tilted at sort of the same angle, but it actually looks like something, instead of Andromeda being the kind of distended blob that it's very difficult for most people to see detail in.
Does it have any other name? Sorry, Jonathan. Does it have
the Silver Coin?
Silver Coin.
The Silver Coin is the common name. Yeah.
I put a link in chat.
It's also a Caldwell. I believe it's a Caldwell object as well. But and the other thing was, right now around midnight or just before midnight, the Triangulum Galaxy, or the original Pinwheel Galaxy, is right at the zenith. So even in more light polluted areas, you have a pretty good shot of seeing it. And especially if you're using a larger telescope, it's just a gorgeous object with tons of nebulas and the spiral arms and just tons of stuff to see, especially if you have a hydrogen alpha or an oxygen 3 filter. You can pick out a lot of the nebulas and the spiral arms. So definitely check that out.
So I've got a 10-second observing report if anyone minds
Go
me
for it.
sharing.
Go for it.
I will share my entire screen. So I joined Dr. Brian Autumn at Alcona Park, which is a very dark site. And I think I have actually submitted some of these photos. It's tough to get the northern side of the Milky Way. And that's what that image is. You can see the Pleiades here, and you can see all sorts of other objects that I had begun to pick up. There's an annoying glowing light where we were at the campsite. Nebula. So there's the view out at Alcona Lake with that light nearby. And if you look real close, right in the center, you'll see the coat hanger. We're looking at the summer triangle as it's setting west. And there's Sagitt to the arrow, and there's the coat hanger right there. So it's always...
Is this Alcona Park in Glenny?
I think so. It's 3 hours north.
Okay, so that's due west of where Jonathan and I observed from with the 24-inch.
Okay, so I know, yeah, you see these clouds. So we didn't quite have a perfectly dark sky, but it was dark enough for me to see just how nice it was. And when I turned skyward, I did a wide angle view and got this. This is the in the middle of the heart of the galaxy where Cassiopeia is. Going this way is Lacerda, and it goes out back out to
beautiful
the Triangulum. You can see the Andromeda right here. You know, the Pleiades easily. I'm quite sure the Triangulum is in here somewhere. I haven't really identified the light coming from it. Maybe this.
I think I see it. It's over to the right, right towards the edge of. If you zoom in over there, right there. Yeah, zoom in right there.
Right here.
There it is.
Okay, well there is Triangulum. I knew it was in this photo somewhere. I wasn't sure where. So this is
What kind of lens were you using? If you don't.
I was using a Tamron 17 millimeter f2.8. In fact, I was in. Pop some info up. There are the numbers. This was, I have a tracker. So I pointed that tracker, put it on sidereal motion, and ran for 105 seconds wide open at ISO 6400. I found at a dark site, you can open up your ISO and really dig in and get. And I'm not even sure I knew about this. So this has been my deepest Milky Way shot that it doesn't involve the core to this date. And I could still go through and figure out some of the stuff that's on here.
That's great.
Yeah. And lastly, I tried to shoot at our Saturn, Jupiter, and the moon and tried to frame it with some pine trees and make a Christmassy thing out of it. I had a contrail, a jet fly right under the moon as I was setting up the photo. And then I took a long exposure. It was too late to catch the lights of the jet going right under. So this is a little bit later when the contrail is moving over the moon. Not the best shot, but I was experimenting with some settings. It was in the neighborhood. So I'm still trying to figure that out. But
it must have been very calm when you did your that previous photo, because the pine trees and the trees are very very well defined. Like there must not have been any wind. Yeah.
It was calm when I did that, and I think this is where I took the long exposure for the galactic arm. That might be Triangulum right there, but it's not. It doesn't look as good. This wasn't as quite as detailed a photo as I was able to get with this. But dark sites, and it gets much easier to get Milky Way detail, star detail. The tracker I had is a Star Adventurer, and I just hooked my camera onto it and pull line it. I get about 2 minutes total of pretty good tracking to where I can get, this was a 105 seconds, so like a minute and I want to say a minute and a half or so. But yep, that is I had fun out at Alcona. Interesting enough, I then got sick. I had also been in a bowling alley, but I found out I did not contract COVID-19. But one of the people in our team did.
Ew.
No one else did. So it was before the shutdown of the bowling alleys. We were already about to shut down that league, and now all bowling alleys in Michigan are down. So not astronomy as usual for me. I always do something else, but that is my observing report, and I did submit those to the calendar.
Thank you, Adrian. Yeah,
I would just like to say for a second that what Adrian just showed are some of the finest astrophotos I've ever looked at. Adrian, you are an extraordinarily talented amateur astronomer.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. And I got to give Doug Bach some credit because I had to go under his wing and a few other guys for the last couple of years trying to learn this stuff. So I accept it and I deflect some of it to the guys that have been doing it for years. They teach well.
Well said, Adrian. Thank you. All right, I'll let y'all have a 10-minute break before we reconvene. While we're breaking, you can turn off the camera, turn off the audio, what have you. Adrian, while we're doing our bio break, I just want to say that Alcona Park, if you're into birding, is basically like ground zero for Kirtland's warblers.
I'll have to make it a day-night trip. We
Yeah.
were listening to trumpeter swans the entire time, and
I'm jealous.
I could hear them across the lake. I wanted to just open up the camera and see if I got lucky, but I never did. I never did point it out there.
Oh, sorry. Diane, I've gotten interested in birding since you led me around a birding trip on Maui last winter. So where is this Alcona Park that you're talking about?
So that is Glenny is located. It's inland. It's about an hour inland, between I-75 and the lake.
John, I put a link in chat, John.
Yeah. Check out the link because it's kind of in no man's land, but it happens to be due west of where Jonathan and I have our own dark sky site where the 24-inch lives. And that whole area is jack pine country. So that's where the Kirtland's warblers are. And Jonathan and I, we went up for a 4-night observing trip at the end of September, and the weather was terrible. We didn't get to break out the 24-inch once. But what we did get to do, drive down from Glenny to Mayo, and we hit the jack pine area, and we saw like a whole glade of Kirtland's warblers. It was just as crazy as it was in Maui. You walk into the woods and all these rare birds are just right there. So you have to time it real carefully because when it's nesting season, you're not allowed in. But this was after the official end of nesting season, so we just literally walked in and were surrounded by these birds. It was great. Yes, Jim.
And the real central location for the Kirtlands are between Mayo and Grayling, I believe.
Yeah.
Mayo, Kalkaska, Grayling, and just south of there.
Glenny does bill itself as Kirtland's warbler area, though. I mean, I think it appears that either the jack pines, the birds, or both have recovered to the extent that they're definitely in the Glenny area. Because I review the sightings before we even try to go out and looking for these critters. So yeah, Mayo, Grayling, up to Glenny, through Hale. That's all a good place to go looking for them these days. And I see, Adrian, are you the one showing all these fabulous birdies?
This was today's quick Kensington Park trip.
Lucky.
Pretty lucky.
Oh boy.
Ooh.
I had that's the I showed this earlier before we started. I was able to get a takeoff of the red-tail hawk here. Beautiful. And it was reasonably sharp. I did process this a bit to sharpen it some. The shot I really wanted that I wish I could have had would have been very next frame. I missed. I had a bird looking, well, kind of off in the distance, not really at me. But yeah, that one I would have needed to maybe dial down the focal length to maybe 400 and get a little more room, give the bird a little more room. So I'm taking that in for next time.
Still,
That's yeah, this one wasn't too bad.
We've got the eruption, and that's eruption IRR, not ER. So there's some incursions of songbirds where they normally wouldn't be. So there's an eruption going on of evening grosbeaks right now, which I've not seen them. There's an eruption of pine siskins, which are little finches that Jonathan and I saw up north. And we've got the red-breasted nuthatches, which they've reached Dearborn, and they are just so cute.
Can I interrupt you for 1 minute? Michael, what the hell are you wearing? Robarker?
Oh, it's my pet dragon.
Is that Eldon?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So cute.
What is the
Yeah,
shirt?
he's like falling asleep on me here.
What shirt are you wearing? What is that?
Oh, it's a sweater, the red sweater.
Oh, okay, because it looks like you're
Yeah.
wearing. Yeah, okay.
I know the chair behind me is also orange, so it kind of blends in on the camera.
Okay, it looked like you were wearing, football uniform, I guess.
I know it does.
Okay, sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
That's okay. That was it for my quick impromptu slideshow. I got a few shots on bird there, and with the red-tailed hawk, it flew into the area that I was at, and I saw it dive toward trees, and I said, okay, it's got to be over there. So I start, running, or half run, half walking quietly. I'm looking for it, can't find it. A couple people pass me, and they say, I think that's it over there. And I run over to the spot, and there it is, sitting there. And that was the series of photos that I had of it, just kind of agitatedly looking around, thinking about stuff. And then it took off. So that was it was a quick trip. I'd say about an hour trip, but a good one. So
we have a great horned owl that's moved into our neighborhood. 2 of them, actually. So we've heard them doing the duet in the evening. But I have some very demanding cats that wake me up at 3 a.m. because they want more food and more treats and whatnot. So when I'm stumbling around the house at 3 a.m, I can hear the owl outside. It's like, okay, I guess I'm glad I got up because I can hear the owl, and the owl is initially it was across the street. It seems like it's moved in closer, but I still haven't seen it.
I thought I'd just share a quick video.
Yes, please, Doug.
Ooh,
Atlas, the new comet.
Yeah, November 8th, I was clear, so I took about 30 minutes.
Birthday.
It was clear, so I took about 30 minutes worth of frames, so we'll just run through this real quick. Obviously, I cycled through it 3 times. That's it. A little shorty.
So how visible is it, Doug? I mean, obviously
it's actually about 8.5. I mean,
not bad.
JPL always underestimates the, they have an estimate of like 13th magnitude, but the observations people have been making have been in the mid 8s. So I says, oh, this one's going to be easy. These are only 30-second frames. And then I decided to take those 45 and I actually stacked them on the core itself. So that's the comet.
So is it approaching?
It's actually just gone past the closest approach to us.
Okay.
So it's now moving away.
Okay. Yeah, we're all spoiled with Neowise, hoping that it gets brighter and brighter. See if we can see another comet with another tail. But
Adrian, I'm so burned out after 12 years of false alarms. Neowise can't spoil me. It's like comet mild case of commentary PTSD. You know, you just know they're gonna let you down.
So
Well,
my wife and I
good to know.
took a trip last year to Puerto Rico, and we visited Arecibo. And I have some photos I could share of that trip if you're interested.
I think those would be cool.
Dale,
How much
since
time do we
I am
have?
the guest speaker, I don't mind. I allow you to cut into the guest speaker time because thumbs up, I want to see Arecibo.
Okay. All right. So this was the winter time, I don't know, January, February. There's a wide view. You can see the reflector. Can you see my mouse?
No? Move it around. Yes.
See it there?
Yes.
We can see it.
So this antenna, this one here, the long, skinny, pointy one, that antenna used to be, I can't remember what they said, 50, 75 feet longer. That was damaged in Hurricane Maria that went through. And it broke half of it off, or 70% or something. But it still works. It just reduced, you know, attenuated. So there's a small little museum around there that we visited from a different angle. This thing moves around. I guess one of these cables here broke, and then another one, and they're worried about, you know, it just falling, crashing, and taking a tower or two with it.
Yes.
Here's some of those cable stays. It's actually the last photo I have here.
Now, how long ago did you visit?
It was 2019. I'm going to say February, maybe late January.
Okay, so roughly a year or so ago. Yeah.
And just under 2 years ago. So this is
That's right.
inside the small museum. Close up of the miniature. Nobel Award to someone who was working there. There's the entrance. Everything is first in Spanish and secondarily in English. There's a good view of the piece that's suspended. I don't know what you would call that. But multiple antenna, this piece moves, it can spin around, it can tilt, and adjust. It can be collimated, I guess. I don't know. There's the antenna that broke off, the line feed antenna, I think it's called. So it was shortened from Hurricane Maria. Good close-up views. Oh, you can see the air conditioning here. Look at it. There's a little bit of moss stuff growing in there, dust accumulating, forming dirt. But there's one of the arrays inside. There's some of the corrosion there. Might just be grease droppings or something. Not geese droppings. It could be that too.
There was a seagull on top of it.
Yeah. Well, it's the tropics. There's a lot of humidity. Couldn't fly my drone. IEEE and ASME landmarks. It's an interesting drive to get up there. It's not straightforward. There's no highway to get to Arecibo. Directly below it. So this isn't really a smooth surface. It's like a grate.
Yes.
Here's the thickness of the cable. And a reflector shoe.
Wow.
You won't walk out on there. It's like a snowshoe.
I don't think James Bond wore those.
Probably not. I'm planning on making this an album, shared on Facebook. I'll make it public.
Yes. Are you a member of the Historical Observatories group on Facebook, Dale?
I don't think so.
Check them out. That they have albums of places. You know, they did a whole album of the Mount Wilson fires and whatnot. I don't think they have anything from Arecibo posted yet.
You know, it was in the news. We took this last year. I never really shared these. I think actually one or two of the photos crept into our personal calendar.
Right.
But it seemed like the right time to, hey, let's share this.
Yes.
You know, it's gonna be gone. Are they gonna rebuild anything, or there are no plans at this point?
There are no plans. They're tearing it down on an emergency basis before it kills somebody.
Yeah.
Because they think it's basically in collapse, and they want to collapse it before it does it by itself.
Yeah. So there's some stuff in here from inside. Takes time to read through these. Sometimes we just take photos, so we can read the stuff later. Can't use your cell phone because the radio frequency disrupts.
Right.
Here's the entrance. That's the first.
So do you have to drop your cell phone off or put it in airplane mode?
Yeah, just put on airplane mode. I think it's fine.
Yeah, because you can also take pictures with it if they at least allow you to do that.
Yeah,
well, thank you very much, Dale. Definitely get that online for us to mourn, if you can.
Yeah,
it's a good way to put it.
Particularly like some of these zoomed in of the big suspended array. You can see some good detail there.
And honestly, even though these are pictures from 2019, it's timely for the calendar. Just saying.
Yeah. This one in particular, Dale.
That's a really cool picture.
Yeah, coming from the snooty photography world, I'd say that you captured the detail very well, and whatever choice of settings.
This is my one photo. I have to give credit to her.
Yeah,
it's beautiful.
I carry a wide lens, and she carries the zoom typically when we walk around. And then I normally carry the 600 when we go birding because she doesn't want to.
Yeah, that's a nice big lens.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I would, if I had the vote, I'd vote that this picture, that or, a picture where you show the full dish, either one would be great.
Yeah, I would say send them both into the calendar committee.
That picture that you just had with the that dome-like thing is called the Gregorian, and Paul Goldsmith designed and built that. Well, had it built.
All right, that was awesome, but I do need to turn things over to the first vice president so we can get on with the feature presentation. And I must say,
so he can turn it back over to you.
Yeah, and I must say that Dale's photographs have been absolutely timely to the subject matter of the presentation tonight. So thank you. All right, all yours, Dale, for like 2 minutes.
Thank you, Diane. Wow. Our feature speaker tonight is none other than our president and president-elect, Diane Hall. Diane is really into and has always been into the Apollo moon landing program. I think she recalls when she was young some of those landings going on. I don't know if she fell in love with any of the astronauts back then.
Only Michael Collins, only as an adult.
She's also really into binocular observing and traveling around to historic astronomy sites. We might hear something about that tonight. But I want you to know that I did a study of Diane. So I would like to share my screen if I can make this work right, okay?
All right. I only fell in love with Michael Collins, Dale. And only as an adult.
Okay. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, so I did some research and using old issues of the WASP and things like that. My research went back to 2009. On the left side of my screen, I put an X for any year when Diane was an officer. She was in office in the last 13 years, counting next year. She was an officer or will be an officer 10 out of those 13 years. I don't know if anybody else can match that. Maybe somebody can, but it would be rare that anybody could. She has really served this club. She was president or will be president in 4 of those 13 years. She was the first vice president in charge of program 2 of those years, and director of outreach 4 of those years. That's pretty amazing. 10 out of the last 13 years. I also tracked down as many of her presentations as I could find. I wasn't successful in going back into the first 3 years I show here. So I don't know how many she gave then. But from 2012 to 2020, I count 15 presentations. That's pretty amazing. I gave the names of them here. This year, she's giving 3 presentations, one of which, the last of which we're about to hear. So I have to applaud Diane and thank Diane for all that she has done for the Warren Astronomical Society. Thank you, Diane.
I'm squirming in my seat. Yikes. Thank you, though. That is, looking back at that, it's like, wow, that's pretty intense. Well, I hope you'll enjoy what I've got tonight. It is a little break from my love of the Apollo program. So let's get that in there.
Am I unshared? I'm trying to figure out how to do it.
Yes. So
Okay,
I should be
great.
shared, you should be unshared, and we should be able to play. All right, Dale, give me a thumbs up if you can see my title page.
Yes.
Excellent. So
Yes.
tonight we've got Unsung Historical Observatories. So, friends, you've heard of Lick, Yerkes, Mount Wilson, Palomar? We're not talking about that tonight. We are also not talking about any number of other places that come to mind readily, because I'm sure many of you can rattle off the names of Lowell, Kitt Peak, the US Naval Observatory, Harvard College Observatory, various telescopes in Mauna Kea or Haleakala. This is not about them. So we're going to start off in New Jersey. Fitz-Randolph Observatory on the grounds of Princeton University in New Jersey was immortalized by Orson Welles in his broadcast on the War of the Worlds. The professor Richard Pearson worked there at Princeton. Fitz-Randolph was brand new at the time of the 1938 broadcast, having opened only 4 years prior to replace the earlier Halsted Observatory, seen there on the right in the black and white photograph. Halsted was demolished to make way for Jolene Hall, a dormitory that still stands today. Halsted was named for General Nathaniel Norris Halsted, who contributed $10,000 for its construction in 1865, when $10,000 was a really good chunk of change. The telescope itself cost another 10 grand, contributed by a Mr. Michael Bonner. But it wasn't the most pleasant place to work, as a posthumous tribute in the Princeton Alumni Weekly made clear. talking about servitude, the awful noises, the terror of the sprocket wheels, the dynamos, the cables, the chains. By the time of its demise in the 1930s, its day was done. Fitz-Randolph, a much more pleasant place to work, was initially called New Halstead. It was actually built from the same stones, and it received New Halstead's Great Refractor, an Alvin Clark telescope from 1882, which was then the fourth largest in the world. The telescope was used by the great Dr. Lyman Spitzer, namesake of NASA's Spitzer Space Telescope, during his tenure at Princeton, but was sold to the military in 1964. Besides Spitzer, Halstead and Fitz-Randolph between them hosted an entire lineage of distinguished American astronomers. We've got Charles A. Young, distinguished solar pioneer, in the center. We've got Henry Norris Russell, the R and the HR diagram, and his student Harlow Shapley, who then went to Harvard. Donald H. Menzel was another. So it was a place where leaders in the field educated future leaders in the field. Now, when the Fitz-Randolph sold off its Great Refractor, it replaced it with a 36-inch Baller and Chivens classical Cassegrain, which had an early fused quartz primary mirror. But Fitz-Randolph didn't have that many active years left. The place was deemed obsolete in the 1990s, was used as a storage area. There are some student websites from the early 21st century that showcase the creepy aspects, like these abandoned-looking stairs leading down to the dungeon. The telescope was disassembled in 2014 and shipped off to New Mexico. It is allegedly in a place called Cloudcroft these days. Now, the original Great Refractor, again, a classic Alvin Clark 19th century telescope, now lives in South Carolina at the Charles E. Daniel Observatory at the Roper Space Museum. So you can visit it. It is still the 8th largest telescope in the refractor telescope in the world. But Fitz-Randolph was demolished this autumn, just in the past couple of months, to make way for a soccer stadium. The university conducted a feasibility study and determined the building was not worth preserving or moving for adaptive reuse. University officials told municipal officials the school will document the structure, salvage the stones from the building for use elsewhere, but it was an ignominious end to a once glorious research institution. And it was the pending unceremonious demolition of Fitz-Randolph that got me thinking earlier this year about these lesser-known historical observatories that one might take for granted because there's massive endowments theoretically protecting them, or they're historic buildings, and even so, they're going to face the wrecking ball or simply fall apart, even though we live in an age of adaptive reuse when we know we can do better things with these buildings. No comment. So I will admit that this next one on the list, Night Ridge in Bloomington, Indiana, it wasn't especially renowned during its lifetime. It was built in the 1930s, 1936, 1937 or thereabouts, for Indiana University, for use by Professor Wilbur Coggeshall and his students. It replaced the earlier Kirkwood University on campus. This was removed from campus some distance. It was utilitarian at best. It was an uncomfortable building. There was no attempt to pretty it up, make it a temple to science, or anything like that. And the telescope was allegedly pretty crude. The limited facilities plus the expansion of the town of Bloomington rendered it obsolete by the mid-1960s, and the telescope was removed. It went to New Jersey, and the New Jersey amateur astronomers have a fabulous account of how they got the telescope for $100 plus transportation. No, the real notoriety of Night Ridge came during its 5 decades of disrepair as a derelict site for urban exploration. Local news outlet The Bloomingtonian called it a bit of an Indiana curiosity and an unofficial landmark. It was featured on the Atlas Obscura website for the benefit of those planning road trips through Indiana. You want to see weird stuff? It's weird, it's there. They had a map, they had directions. Elsewhere online, it was dubbed the creepiest place in Indiana. And Indiana, I assure you, has no shortage of creepy things. But August of this year, it was finally demolished, robbing Bloomington of a bit of local color. Thankfully, the telescope is still located at the NJAA Observatory in Voorhees State Park, New Jersey. It is operational to the public to this day and is open to the public during the summer, provided there's not a plague going on. If you're interested in Cogswell at all, he has an asteroid named in his honor, 11.47 magnitude, easily detectable at an amateur scope. And that's that for Night Ridge. Strangely enough, though, its predecessor, Kirkwood, there on the campus at Indiana U, was never demolished. It's still there. It was built in 1901. It was refurbished extensively for its centennial. And it does public outreach events, at least when there's not a plague going on. It has the original 12-inch refractor built by Warner and Swayze Company. They also have a solar scope. So if you want to visit a historical and slightly less creepy observatory in Indiana, Kirkwood's there. It was named for Daniel Kirkwood, an astronomer and professor of mathematics at IU. He discovered the Kirkwood gaps in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. He was the first to posit in a scientific paper that meteor showers were caused by cometary debris. And at one point, he was dubbed the American Kepler for his laws of planetary rotation. Those laws have been discredited, so he's no longer deemed the American Kepler, but hey, he's still got an asteroid named after him. 1578 Kirkwood, if you are so inclined. We'll now move to Ohio. Now, Mr. Warner and Mr. Swayze got around. In 1919, the telescope company, led by the actual Worcester Warner and Ambrose Swayze, gifted their private observatory on Taylor Road in East Cleveland to the Case School of Applied Science, where they both were trustees. The Cleveland Plain Dealer celebrated this observatory as a plumb line to the heavens. Beautifully capped with a copper dome, it stood 270 feet above Lake Erie on a grassy knoll under then dark skies, and inside was a 9.5-inch refracting telescope built by you-know-who. If you haven't heard of Warner and Swayze, they also built the telescope for a little place in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin, and another one for this joint in California called Lick Observatory. Yeah, they were good. They didn't actually make a profit selling the telescopes. It was a labor of love adjacent to their main business as a machine shop. Well, the original telescope was supplemented in 1941 with a 24-inch Burrell Schmidt housed under a second copper skin dome, and the observatory mounted groundbreaking studies in the 1950s. They proved that the Milky Way was a spiral galaxy. Another one found that cooler stars, red giants, were mainly near the center of the Milky Way. But Cleveland expanded. The light dome overcame the observatory, and the 24-inch Burrell Schmidt went on the road. First in 1957 to a site 30 miles east in Geauga County, known as NASA Observatory, seen there, the red brick building. And then in 1979 for the pristine skies of Kitt Peak, Arizona, where it remains today. The NASA site received, in compensation, a 36-inch telescope, arguably the finest for public observing at the time. And that was that for the original Warner and Swayze. Things really came to an end there by 1980. And the Taylor Road site was sold in 1983. According to locals, it served as times as a cable company and a movie theater. It was generally neglected until 2005, when it was sold to a couple who planned to convert the building into a private residence. But the plan stalled when the new owner was convicted of mortgage fraud and sent to prison in 2007. The derelict observatory has a listing on, you guessed it, Atlas Obscura, so if you missed your chance to poke around Night Ridge, this one is still standing, though in worse and worse shape by the year. Numerous local urban explorers have posted videos, some of in-person exploration, some with a drone's eye view, and I highly recommend it. In addition to being a tempting site for explorers, some of whom come to document and appreciate it, some of whom come to cause damage, like the people who stripped the copper domes. Warren Swayze has seen some volunteer cleanup efforts, like the group that uncovered the amazing green and gold zodiacal floor in a day. And they have a time-lapse video of how they did it. I believe it took them 7 hours. Just stunning. The original Warren and Swayze 9.5-inch telescope was moved in 1982 to a small dome atop the Albert Smith Building at Case Western Reserve University, the successor to the School of Applied Science, where Warner and Swayze served as trustees a century ago. As for their machine company, it was sold to Bendix in 1980. But as for the Nassau site and its 36-inch, it's become part of Geauga Park District's dark sky site, Observatory Park, and remains accessible to the public to this day. Elsewhere in Ohio, in the town of Delaware, Perkins Observatory once had the third largest telescope in the world. The Perkins telescope, seen here at its birthplace in the J.W. Fecker factory in 1923, boasted a 69-inch mirror when fully assembled. But I think you can guess what happened. Ohio's cloudy skies and encroaching light pollution meant the Perkins telescope was moved to Arizona in 1961. It remains in scientific use in its new home, where it's been for decades, at the Lowell Observatory. The Great Reflector was replaced by a 32-inch telescope, also by Fecker, seen here next to the remains of the old pier looming over the platform. Perkins remains open to the public. It continues to be supported by its home institution, Ohio Wesleyan, but if you, say, check out its Wikipedia page, it's basically a list of all the challenges it faces, building maintenance woes, the way the land around the building was sold off to become a golf course. Generally, not good. Now, the grounds of Perkins once hosted another, utterly different telescope, owned not by Ohio Wesleyan, but by Ohio State University, which had a lease agreement. The OSU Radio Observatory, better known as the Big Ear, operated from 1963 until its demolition in 1998, and it participated in SETI, a signal it received called the WOW signal in 1977, remains a contender for a plausible ET contact. Of course, there was no follow-up. The Big Ear was mentioned in the television show The X-Files on account of this. But after OSU's lease expired, the land was sold to a developer, and the Big Ear is now that golf course I mentioned. Now, Perkins also once published an astronomy quarterly called The Telescope. Started in 1932 and edited by then-director Harlan Stetson, the magazine merged in 1941 with another called The Sky to become Sky and Telescope, a magazine most of you might be familiar with. Some of you might have on your coffee table. We'll head east now. Harvard's College Observatory is a little too famous to be on this presentation, but their Oak Ridge Observatory, also called George. Something going on? Please mute.
Fixed it.
Also called George R. Agassiz Station, is another 1930s facility that's been decommissioned in recent decades. Situated 30 miles west of Boston in a semi-rural area, the observatory is on a glacial ridge above the remnants of colonial-era wheat fields. It boasted a dark room, an attractive stone house for researchers, a USGS seismographic station, and numerous telescopes. The 16-inch Baller and Chivens reflector, once hosted in this dome, now lives at National Air and Space Museum's Public Observatory in Washington, D.C. You can see the remains of several smaller telescope piers there on the raised platform. The ORO's 61-inch Wyeth reflector is the largest U.S. telescope east of Texas. Originally, this observatory focused on tracking minor planets, discovering 38, including Inner Main Belt asteroid 4733 ORO, discovered in 1982 and named for the observatory. But during the 1980s, its focus moved to the long-term monitoring of stars, and then to surveys for extrasolar planets. The Wyeth discovered the first potential planet orbiting a star outside our solar system and was used for undergrad research. But by 2005, even a 61-inch telescope was too small and too old-fashioned to do cutting-edge research. And the Harvard-Smithsonian Center for Astrophysics ended projects there in favor of funding remote sites in Arizona, Chile, and Hawaii. Much to the dismay of the undergrads, because, quite frankly, getting their hands on the equipment at Oak Ridge was just so much more immersive than working a computer that operates a telescope down in Chile. Oak Ridge also boasted an 84-inch steerable radio telescope used for the SETI Project Beta. But it was damaged badly in a storm and removed as of 2007, leaving a plainly visible scar on the ground. Now, perhaps it isn't fair to include Allegheny in this presentation. It still bills itself as one of the major astronomical research institutions of the world. But the historic telescopes under its three domes were long ago overshadowed by the great mountaintop observatories of the South and the West, and then by space telescopes and astronomical satellites. And suffice it to say that while many an astronomer dreams of a pilgrimage to Mauna Kea, to Yerkes, to Palomar, Mount Wilson, Chile, not that many of us fantasize about going to Pittsburgh. I mean, it's Pittsburgh. Sorry. But back in the day, Pittsburgh was a center of astronomical innovation. Its first director, S.P. Langley, developed the beginnings of our system of standardized time zones. Director Heber Curtis led the study of galaxies outside our own in the 1920s, before the idea of other galaxies was even settled science. And then director George Gatewood used the Allegheny Observatory to search for extrasolar planets and follow up on claims of other extrasolar planets from 1972 until his retirement in 2008. So the original Allegheny Observatory was founded by a trio of men in 1857. They became the core of the Allegheny Telescope Association. It was an amateur astronomy club. The 13-inch refractor they purchased was for entertainment, not for research. The members liked to look at the moon and the planets, but within a decade they got bored. Membership declined, and they donated the observatory and telescope to Western University of Pennsylvania, better known as the University of Pittsburgh. So Professor Samuel Pierpont Langley, professor of astrophysics, became the real director of the observatory, and he made it an actual research institution. He used the refractor to study the sun, and his friendship with Pittsburgh industrialist William Thaw put the observatory on solid financial footing. Langley dreamed up a scheme in 1869 to get income by selling a subscription service for time. He would measure time accurately using astronomical means and then transmit the time over telegraphs to customers like the Pennsylvania Railroad. This was the foundation of our standardized time zones. And it paid the bills for the observatory until 1883, when the U.S. Naval Observatory started offering the service for free. So while Langley expanded the observatory extensively, once he left for the Smithsonian and his assistant James Keeler took over as his successor in 1891, the limitations of the decades-old facility were pretty clear. It didn't have the best telescope for the day, didn't have the best equipment. Keeler was an early proponent of the use of large reflectors. He had been to Lick, used the 36-inch Crossley reflector, and he, along with George Ellery Hale, realized that the future of astronomy was not with refracting telescopes. He began to plan for a new site with a larger reflector telescope. He did fine work on Saturn, discovering or confirming that the rings were made of particles instead of a solid body, but he wasn't the best fundraiser. And frustrated by delays, he ended up going back to California to Lick, where he suddenly, shockingly died of a stroke at the age of 42. His successors, telescope maker John Brashear and Professor Frank Wadsworth, saw the plans for a new observatory through. They picked a site in Riverview Park, 4 miles north of downtown Pittsburgh, 8 miles off the university campus, and the cornerstone was laid in 1900. It took quite a few years to build, and it's gorgeous. The new building is a glorious classical revival tribute to the unity of art and science, decorations, stained glass, statues, you name it, a true temple to science. The original 1857 building was demolished in the 1950s. Something called Triangle Tech lives on the site today. So Allegheny's smallest dome houses the Fitz-Clark refractor, 13-inch scope constructed in 1861 for the Pittsburgh amateur telescope guys. The lens was stolen on July 8th of 1872 and held for ransom. Director Langley and the university decided they were not going to negotiate with hostage takers. They wouldn't pay up. They felt it would set a bad precedent. And they ended up getting it back thanks to the dogged work of a reporter from one of the Pittsburgh papers who found the lens in a hotel trash basket with a scratch across it. It was shipped off to Alvin Clark, who reground the lens and left it better than it ever had been. So now named the Fitz-Clark, the telescope lived at the Allegheny Observatory's original site until it moved to its current home in 1906. The middle dome is home to the 31-inch Keeler Memorial Reflector, built in 1906, named for the ill-fated second director of the observatory, whose ashes are under the base of the telescope. This scope is dedicated to spectrographic research. It's collected data from some 11,000 stars in its career, and a mirror replacement in 1992 left it ideal for astrometric purposes. But the observatory's website notes, sadly, due to grant constraints, the Keeler is currently undersubscribed. And that was in 2003. The situation has not really improved. The largest dome houses the mighty Thaw Memorial Refractor, built by the Brashear Optical Company in 1912 and designed for photographic use. The telescope tube is 47 feet long. It has a moving mass of 8,000 pounds. It's collected in its career 110,000 exposures on glass plates, and thanks to a 1985 lens replacement, continued doing scientific work into this century. It is to this day the third largest refractor in the US after the Yerkes and the Lick. The Thaw telescope is superb at measuring astrometric parallax, or the distance between stars, and Allegheny led in that field until around the year 2000. What happened was that the data collected by the Hipparcos satellite during its run from 1989 to 1993 was as good, and it could do more, faster. So thanks to space-based observing, the Allegheny became obsolete. The current director, David Turnchek, has semi-jokingly called himself a caretaker of the place. It's beautiful. It's historic. its day is done. Now, up to now, the observatories that we've covered have been doomed by time for obvious reason. Low altitude, light pollution, and their scientific use is past. Chabot, located in rugged California, is a bit of a different case. For one, it was always an outreach institution first and foremost. And, well, when the going got rough, Chabot just packs up and moves up the hillside twice. So the original Oakland Observatory seems to have undergone a few architectural changes in its day. The picture record is not too terribly consistent, but at least at one point it had this amazing tower. It was situated in what's now downtown Oakland, California. Anthony Chabot, the Quebec-born father of hydraulic mining, financed it. He stipulated the place not be named for him, a wish that was disregarded after he died. A plaque marks the spot in Lafayette Square where the original Chabot was located. Light pollution forced a move by 1915 to a new site on Mountain Road at the foot of the Oakland Hills. Here, director Kingsley Whiteman, aka Mr. Science, entertained generations of school kids. He did tricks with hydrogen, helium, lightning rods, stand your hair on end, that kind of thing. But like many educational institutions in California, it was built in a fault line, specifically the Hayward Fault. Field trips stopped after 1977, and while an attempt to shut it down entirely in 1980 was thwarted by Mr. Science and his fans, I never got to go there as a California school child. It did remain open to the public in a general sense until the new campus made its debut in the year 2000. So, the 8-inch Alvin Clark refractor named Leah is the original 1883 instrument donated by Anthony Chabot on the condition she be available free to the public forever. She has been the mainstay of every incarnation of Chabot. Their 20-inch telescope named Rachel claims to be the largest refractor in the western U.S. regularly available to the public. That depends, however, on whether west is defined as west of the Mississippi or west of the Rockies. Rachel made her debut at the Panama Pacific Exposition in 1915, the World's Fair that told the world San Francisco was back, Phoenix-like, after the earthquake and fire in 1906. And her arrival at Chabot gave names to both telescopes, as the director vowed to not abandon the earlier telescope in favor of her newer, prettier sister. This is another Warner and Swayze refractor, and Rachel honestly looks like a miniature Yerkes to me, complete with the classic white and blue color scheme that you see at Yerkes. Chabot is now located 1,500 feet above San Francisco Bay, and its largest telescope, the 36-inch Nellie, is a modern research-grade scope. Nellie, Rachel, Leah, and their sister scope Maya form the heart of Chabot Space and Science Center. In keeping with Anthony Chabot's request, the public can come for free to view the stars every Friday and Saturday evening, weather permitting, but Chabot has been hit hard by the pandemic and is now offering private experiences for, say, $1,000. So if you want to take your space science-centered honey on a really good and unique date, $1,000, and Chabot is yours for the night. Chamberlain Observatory in Denver holds Rachel's rival, the other 20-inch refractor accessible to the public west of the Mississippi. Owned and operated by the University of Denver, this beautiful Romanesque building dates to 1890. Light pollution, surprise, makes it no longer suited to scientific research, but the Denver Astronomical Society has hosted the public there for 60 years and counting. Chamberlain is named for the Denver real estate magnate who pledged $50,000 in 1888 to build and equip the facility. Remember, that's 5 times what General Halstead gave Princeton back in 1865. Sadly, Chamberlain then went broke in the Great Panic. Easy come, easy go. The Alvin Clark refractor sits on a Segmuller mount and is known as the Clark Segmuller. It was displayed at the Columbian Exposition, that's the Chicago World's Fair, where America got Ferris wheels and serial killers, and then transported from Chicago to Denver on a private Pullman train car all of its own. It first was used for observing in 1894, when Professor Herbert A. Howe used it to observe M13 and the moon. The Clark Segmuller dates from a decade that saw a flurry of great refractors being constructed, but the age of the great refractor itself was about to close. Some people like James Keeler saw it coming, and George Ellery Hale effectively ended it all with the introduction of the 60-inch reflector at Mount Wilson in 1908. And now we jump forward several decades and cross the border into Canada. When the David Dunlap Observatory outside Toronto made its debut in 1935, its 75-inch reflector was second only to Mount Wilson's mighty 100-inch Hooker telescope. For almost 60 years, it remained the largest telescope in Canada. But as we've seen, time and light pollution are not kind to low-lying urban observatories in the East, and the DDO suffered the fate of many, many American counterparts. It was the brainchild of Clarence Augustus Chant, a Canadian astronomer and a professor at the University of Toronto. But observatories need funding, so he chatted up a guy named David Dunlap, a lawyer and mining entrepreneur who was interested in the project. But Dunlap died 3 years into the proceedings. Thankfully, his widow, Jessie, took up the cause, and Jessie Dunlap worked for the next 10 years with Chant to make sure the project succeeded. When it opened in 1935, Helen Sawyer Hogg was among the astronomers who relocated to the DDO. She built on the work of Henrietta Swan Leavitt to use variable stars known as Cepheids to enhance our understanding of the Milky Way's size, age, and structure. She became a world-renowned expert on globular clusters and variable stars within those clusters, and at one point she became the president of the American Association of Variable Star Observers. Other work done at the DDO included cutting-edge black hole research. But in time, Canadian astronomy shifted to collaborations outside Canada, like the Canada-France-Hawaii telescope at Mauna Kea and the Atacama Large Millimeter Array in Chile. The DDO and its equipment weren't suited to the study of the structure of the origins of the universe, and in 2007, the University of Toronto announced that thanks to light pollution from all these lovely houses now around the facility, they would sell the site. A very convoluted mess of legal wrangling followed. The upshot is that after 6 years of protests, lawsuits, you name it, the members of the Royal Astronomical Society of Canada, Toronto, took ownership of the DDO and its administrative center. In addition, the Corsica Development Group that had originally bought the observatory and 190 acres of land from UT donated 100 acres back to the city of Richmond Hill, preserving that from future development. And you might call that a happy ending. Except it was really ugly. There were lawsuits. It was bad. You can look up the paper trail. I don't even want to talk about it. The damage done by the wrangling over the DDO is lasting. I could not, of course, do any presentation on historic observatories without a brief mention of this one. The McMath-Hulbert Solar Observatory is Michigan's own unsung facility. It's got an illustrious past, a precarious present, an uncertain future. Its 3 classic towers are now enclosed by trees amid the sprawl of Oakland County. I will simply say they have an active club working to save the place from the fate of Night Ridge or Warner and Swayze, and I recommend you check them out. And I will close with this. This is the dead observatory that captured and broke my heart. I love radio dishes. I'm weird. I always have. Site 515 was a cluster of radio dishes on the campus of Stanford University. On the other side of Interstate 280 from the famous dish antenna that looms over the campus and remains a campus landmark. In 1956, newly arrived Professor Ronald Bracewell, from Australia originally, began to design and build an array of 32 small dish antennae, each 10 feet in diameter, arranged in a cross and wired up so that they could work together. Beginning in 1961, this antenna farm mapped microwaves from the sun 7 days a week through the duration of the 11-year solar cycle, and the data was used to make solar weather maps that went to NASA, and NASA used them to predict radiation peaks to support the first manned landing on the moon. Subsequently, an array of 5 larger antennae, each 60 feet in diameter, was built. They reached out even farther into space to study angular diameters, temperatures, polarization of galaxies, kind of stuff that revealed the direction of motion of our solar system relative to the cosmic background. And the algorithm that Bracewell created to reconstruct images from these scans was universally adopted in computer-assisted tomography scans. So modern CAT scans owe their DNA, basically, to the Site 515. But over the decades, it fell into disrepair. Weeds, poison oak, animals, dilapidated structures. It made it a mess and a declared fire hazard. By the time I arrived on Stanford's campus in 1998, it was already a ruin. For almost 2 years, the School of Engineering considered restoring and operating the antennae, but in the end, the university evaluated the dishes as they would any other historic building on campus and said they don't warrant preservation. They don't qualify. And Site 515 was demolished in 2006, other than some of the piers autographed by astronomical luminaries, which were saved and transported somewhere, and I don't know where they are right now. By 2006, I was young, broke, in Michigan, and I couldn't even go say goodbye. If you want to check out one of these sites before it's too late, many of these are still affiliated with the club or observatory, so when COVID-19 subsides, you can access them in some fashion. Inactive sites like Warner and Swayze or Oak Ridge may require a bit of wrangling to access, and the demolished ones, frankly, aren't there anymore, though you can see the original sites of Allegheny. It's a building called Triangle Tech, and you can visit the Chabot Memorial Plaque in downtown Oakland. I would like to give my thanks to every local news outlet, architecture blog, student astronomer, urban explorer, enthusiast of trivia who wrote the articles, built websites, and took pictures that allowed me to piece together the obscure and improbable stories of these places, because quite frankly, a lot of this stuff has been swept under the rug, and it was a bit tricky. Any questions?
Yeah, when's the book coming out? I'm not kidding.
Thank you.
Fabulous.
Thank you.
Absolutely fabulous.
So, Diane, would you consider the Peach Mountain Radio Telescope as soon to join this list?
Yeah, I had to really work to overcome a Michigan bias because there's certainly enough sad stories in Michigan. I mean, that was the reason that I didn't go full bore on the McMath-Hulbert, because quite frankly, I think that there are members of the club more qualified than me to go in depth about that. I was really shocked by the demolition of Fitz-Randolph. I mean, when that was announced, it was one of those things like when the University of Chicago said it would close Yerkes. It's like, they can't do that. They can't demolish Fitz-Randolph. And then they did. I was like, wow. That's Princeton. They're sitting on gobs of money. They had Nobel Prize winners there, you know? So that's what really sort of sparked me to go cast a broader net than Michigan itself, because, yeah, in between Peach Mountain, McMath-Hulbert, the fate of the old, astronomy and club stuff in Detroit. There's a lot of stories here just in Michigan. Definitely a book's worth. And then Bob mentioned the 2 original Vatican observatories in Europe. I could have done a whole sequel on European observatories because Jonathan and I were in Berlin last year. And one of the things I wanted to see was, hey, the Berlin Observatory where they discovered Neptune, or rather where they looked at the figures for where Neptune was supposed to be, and an astronomer actually looked through a telescope and there it was. That's great, right? Nah, man, that was demolished back when Kaiser Wilhelm was still around. That's been gone for a century. So that was a bummer. But yeah, there's a lot of outmoded urban observatories in Europe too.
That was a
Diane?
good
Yes.
presentation.
Any of the folks on this broadcast tonight, if you're interested in taking a look at McMath Hulbert, you can contact me or Marty, or there's several others, but be happy to show you around. And we do have some new initiatives going, which we have some hopes will promote the cause of preserving McMath Hulbert. So.
Excellent.
Jim,
Good to hear
I
it.
recently joined the McMath Hulbert Society. I haven't announced anything, but I know I sent in some money for membership. So I need to take you up on that. I was there recently taking pictures, but I lost those pictures. I ended up deleting them before it was time to upload them to computer. But I plan on taking some more. I'd love to get some access beyond that gate so that I could get a little closer look.
Thanks, Adrian. Just give me a call anytime. I live very close to it, so I can be had pretty easily. And I'd be happy to show you
I
around.
will let you know when I plan to be there.
Okay.
I'll just have to find your name or your number in the directory and give you a call.
What's
Yeah, do that.
As Jim S.
So Diane, what do you have against Pittsburgh?
What's that, Dale?
What do you have against Pittsburgh?
Oh, yeah, the football team, of course.
Oh, okay.
Steelers or Panthers?
Diane, can you hear me?
I live there. Give it a rest.
Diane,
We can hear you, Laura. I don't know why people just keep talking over you, but
I cannot
but go
actually hear
ahead.
Laura. I can hear that she's speaking, but I can't hear what she's saying.
All right, Jim S.
Yes.
I would like to go see that.
Speak up.
I would like to go with you to see that place.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
She wants to go with you to see.
Laura said, I can. Yeah, I can hear her fine. She said she wants to go to visit McMath Hulbert. So
right, that's what she said.
Yeah. What is Jim's last name? Starts with
Shedlowski.
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 Well, I want to do a presentation on Harlow Shapley, by the way. That's one of the guys that I got on my list.
He's a cool dude. He's a cool dude, not just because of, his career, but also when he was wrong about something and science demonstrated that he was wrong, he admitted he was wrong and embraced science, which 2 thumbs up, cool dude.
Class guy. Yeah.
That's
right. So that's
Diane,
one of my guys.
another interesting anecdote I just became aware of is that Perkins telescope was used by Kent Ford when he started working with Vera Rubin.
Yes.
On discovering the more efficient way of taking spectroscopes or spectrographs. And the Perkins telescope was one of the first instruments he used. It was out at Lowell to do that research.
Yeah, no, it's had a whole incredible career down there in Arizona, but Lowell is anything but a unsung, unloved observatory, especially these days. So
absolutely,
that's true.
Dynamic place.
Yes,
really.
Yeah, Lowell is what most of these institutions only wish they could have been.
Yep, that's true. That was a great presentation. I got to tell you, Diane.
Thank you.
That
was good, Diane. Thanks.
That was just as smooth as silk.
Yeah.
Great job.
I had a lot of fun with that because every rabbit hole I went down turned out to be a pretty valuable one, because it's almost improbable when you look at these humble little places in Indiana and Ohio is like what they originally were capable of achieving.
Well, I think that the space program has taken the heat out of a lot of it, and that's unfortunate too. But
well, yeah, the space program, international collaborations. I mean, none of these telescopes can compete with anything going on in Chile.
Space, right?
End of story.
Yeah.
I mean,
or in space as well.
Yeah.
Of course. Yeah. That's something.
Allegheny kept on trucking longer than most. They really tried, or rather, Director Gatewood really tried to keep it relevant, and he just couldn't.
Couldn't do it. That's too bad. Well, that was the fate of the refractor telescope too, pretty much.
Yep. No, that was it's really a shame looking at the career of Keeler, because as I said, he was one of the few people at the time who really looked at things and go, the future is reflectors. And he never lived to see that future, and that's, that's a real tragedy.
E. Barnard thought he was the greatest, and when he took over, obviously, that whole story has its own feat to it. But
yeah, Keeler and Hale really were the persons who relegated refractors to history.
Yes, he did.
Yeah, I thought about including the list of the quote unquote great capital G, capital R refractors that were being built just in the 1890s.
Yep.
And it was stunning.
Yeah.
And every single one of those telescopes was obsolete within 15 years.
Yep. Astounding.
They were obsolete, but guys like, what's his name at Lowell, used their big refractor. What's his? Somebody come up with his name.
Esto Slifer.
Yeah, right. Used that to really reinforce or to furnish the information that Hubble needed to do his thing back in the 20s.
That was a 24-inch refractor, wasn't it? I think that was the size of it, wasn't it?
Yeah,
the one at Lowell?
one of the biggest out there.
Yeah, Lowell. Yeah, it's 24.
Just been refurbished.
Yeah, it has. Yeah.
Speaking of famous telescopes that fell into repair, Herschel's telescopes.
Oh, the 80-inch.
Were basically left to rot, and now they're either rebuilding or restoring them, if I recall correctly.
That was that 84-inch that was built by Herschel, wasn't that the one that?
No, that was the Leviathan of Parsonstown, right? That was Lord
that?
Ross's. Wasn't it Lord Ross's that was the 84-inch?
Yeah, I think so.
Oh, I thought it was Herschel's.
Herschel's telescope would be useful, if nothing else, for tourism.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Although Herschel did almost all of his real observing with like an 8-inch or a 10-inch telescope.
That's right.
The larger telescopes he built, he didn't like. And he didn't use them nearly as much.
Right.
So
they weren't as maneuverable as what the
they're not
was.
portable.
And they weren't ground well. I mean, the mirrors were not well formed compared to the smaller mirrors. So.
Were they glass or speculum? I think at the time they were
speculum.
Yes, speculum.
Yeah.
Well, imagining the skies back then, we're facing things that Herschel may not have faced. There's plenty of dark sky within 20 minutes. Or just going outside because, the industrial age with the bright lights isn't going in yet. So,
but he was also living in England during a period of wood smoke and coal burning. So when you look at some of the conditions that the urban astronomers were dealing with through the Industrial Revolution, I was like, that was some bad stuff.
That was really horrid. Yeah.
Yeah. So that, I guess, seeing was bad and transparency was not so good.
Nope.
But we added an element called light domes.
Oh, no kidding. You think?
Yeah. So it's observing with the eye. I mean, I fielded that question about observing. We have that instrument at Peach Mountain that was in the McMath Hubert, and it got transferred. We have the 24-inch McMath, old Cassegrain. I've operated that telescope. I mean, for planetary, that thing gives the best views that I've seen. And it's a shame that, with the plague, only our observatory director has been up there to just make sure it's still, everything's in working order. but that would have been a fine instrument to look at Mars through during opposition. And we had somebody that passed away that made some custom eyepieces for it. Mark Cray had a couple custom eyepieces that we still use for observation. And some of the best views of the planets is, as they go around that you would see. Unfortunately, it's also overgrown there. So like most other places that the trees have grown up. So we've got some trees to cut down. We have to fight with the University of Michigan to cut some of those trees down, but that would, if we could, it would extend the views that we get out there. It's those older telescopes have kind of a magic to them, I think. It's like this telescope's been looking at the night sky for many years. And
Interesting thing about that telescope, Adrian, it was built by Robert McMath and dedicated to his dad, who had just passed away. But it was built to do outreach with. You know, it was a solar observatory, but they put that 24-inch Cassegrain back in Tower 1 with the idea they were going to take outreach movies, time-lapse movies of various objects, mainly the solar system objects, like they did. That was what really started McMath Hobart back in 1930. So they had kind of come around. The two larger towers had been dedicated and built with more sophisticated solar equipment, and they put that 24-inch in Tower 1 to go back to the beginning.
Tower 1 is the shortest of the three, right?
Right.
Yeah, it's the one that I had the photograph of in my presentation.
Yeah. Yeah, there's an angle I can get where I can get all three towers and the gate. So many trees. It's there's barely any space above any of the towers. Got to go through there with that chainsaw. But I think there's also is the house over there. Is that a caretaker or is that just somebody bought the property next to that site?
No, it belongs to the property, and it was originally the one of the dwellings for the astronomers there.
Okay, yeah, I drove up there and I pulled into the parking lot and saw the dwelling there. I kind of looked around and said, should probably get these photos and get out of here quick. But yeah, I had wondered about that house, but it's yeah, it's a beautiful place. It definitely would need a lot of repair, but yeah, it's getting pictures of it, while we yet have that place to work in.
If Adrian, just contact Jonathan or one of the other officers there. They can pass on my phone numbers and address. So.
Okay, I'll do that.
Any other questions, gang?
Thanks for a great presentation, Diane.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Jim.
Thank
That was
you.
wonderful.
Thank you.
All right. Well, I'm sorry we can't go out to the Coney, but
Diane?
Yes.
I have an announcement.
Yes.
Jeff McLeod will be our main speaker at our next meeting on December the 7th.
Woohoo!
That's great.
Makes me happy.
What's he going to talk on?
I don't have a title. You'll find out in due course.
It'll be in the WASP.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Awesome. Good news. All right. Yeah. Hang out, gang. Channel's open. Yep. Thank you.
Take care.
See you at virtual Cranbrook.
See ya. Bye.
All right. See you all.
Bye-bye, all.
Good night, everybody.
Jonathan, do you have the number of people for tonight?
Yeah, it looks like we peaked at about 15 people on the Webex, or maybe 13. Yeah, I guess 13.
Okay.
Although I'm not sure. I'm not sure I really believe these metrics because I don't know. It goes in and out. But.
Seemed like I was looking at more faces than that. But what
Yep.
about YouTube?
Oh well, but we had. Sorry, that was on YouTube. On the Webex, I think we had a total of. I think we had like 28 people.
That's more like it.
Yeah. So I think we probably had like 41 total or 42 total.
Okay, it's pretty good. Thanks, John.
Alrighty, have a great night. All right, I think I'm gonna shut it down. Thank you for joining us.
Bye, y'all.